Let's welcome Jeff Paterson back from vacation and back to the program after a week in the Okanagan. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, guys.
So, you missed a few things. It seems on this show, once one element of the show goes on vacation, shit happens for the Canucks.
All hell breaks loose.
So, because Matt was off the day that they made the Evander Kane trade.
That's right.
And then I thought I was safe. You know, you always talk about these dog days. Oh, get through the first couple of days of free agency and then kind of goes quiet. Apparently not. So, you're right. I was on a golf course in Kelowna when I saw the Arturs Silovs news break, and then can't recall where I was, but somewhere in the Okanagan when they moved off Dakota Joshua as well. So, it turned out to be a fairly eventful week.
Well, based on your social media, you were either on a golf course or at the neighborhood brew pub in downtown Penticton. I've been tracking you, J-Pat, over the week.
Stalker.
Well, you see
More
his
golf courses, more golf courses
than
but more golf courses than neighborhood. Although you're in Penticton on a Saturday night, how can you not?
Oh, yeah.
Or else
Hit
you
the
go
patio. So,
Yeah. Yellow Dog, if not neighborhood. Okay, so we'll start with the Joshua trade. Your thoughts?
Yeah, waiting for the next shoe to drop, and I have to think that there is one, so it's hard to fully grade it, but I'm not surprised his name was out there. They needed to clear some cap space, and I guess if there's a disappointment for me, it's that I really wanted to see what a motivated Dakota Joshua was going to look like and do for the Vancouver Canucks after an offseason, and we all know why it was an offseason, but he never used the cancer diagnosis as any kind of excuse. He was apologetic for his season at the end of the year. And I thought, a full healthy summer to train and get ready and hit the ground running with a training camp. Look out. I mean, this is a guy that had 18 goals in 63 games, was a force in the playoffs, played really well in the playoffs the previous year against Nashville and Edmonton. And I wanted to see what he was going to look like when he regained sort of the top form. We'll now have to watch him from afar, I suppose, in Toronto. I like the move from Toronto's standpoint. I think at that acquisition price, why wouldn't you take a flyer on a big body who's got soft hands, who is a terrific penalty killer? And I think that's kind of lost a little bit in the shuffle here, is that he was one of the Canucks' top penalty killers. So I get why they made the move, but I need to see what's next for the Vancouver Canucks before I can fully give it a letter grade. I mean, it's a clear salary dump. We know that. And I guess after watching the Silovs deal, this is the summer of fourth-round draft picks. And so Dakota Joshua doesn't play here anymore. And it's unfortunate because, look, this isn't a team that has a ton of size. And I think what this move does is places more emphasis on the Evander Kane experiment to pan out for the Vancouver Canucks. What you've got in Kefir Sherwood. He's going to hit everything that moves. Evander Kane, if he's on and doing the things that he's done throughout his career, he can be a physical force. But beyond that, this isn't a group that has a ton of size or a ton of snarl up front. And I do think that was one of the frustrations of the Vancouver Canucks was they wanted a little bit more of that from Dakota Joshua. And I'm not sure that it's totally in his DNA. He's a big body, but with the 18 goals and some of them spectacular variety, I think he thought he was a little bit more of an angler than he was a guy that was going to crush defensemen through the boards. And I think at times the Canucks were, I don't know if frustrated is the right word, but I think they thought there was more there, or that there ought to be more there. And so there were some inconsistency issues. And again, last year was almost a write-off for Dakota Joshua. He was selected the Canucks finalist for the Masterton and was super appreciative of that. I think, he understood sort of why he had been selected by the Vancouver chapter of the Professional Hockey Writers Association and, recognizing the struggles that he had been through. But how many times have we talked about guys? It's like trying to jump on board without a training camp, and he missed the first month of the season. And really, when I look back at Dakota Joshua's season last year, so he misses the first month of the season. He's recovering from not just the physical side of testicular cancer, but the mental strain that I'm sure it placed on him. He played from the middle of November until early January and then suffered a leg injury, battled through that, missed some time, battled through that. When he got back, they stopped again for the Four Nations. His season was just stops and starts, and it never really felt like it launched at all last year. And so that's why I think he'll go away. He'll take the summer here and he'll hit the ground running. And I would expect that he'll be a nice piece for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but What the Canucks do with that cap space they've gained, that remains this unanswered question.
Well, one of the first responses from the poll question was, guys, I wouldn't be surprised if they sit on it. I mean, I think most of us are thinking it's imminent. Is there any chance they just sit on us and have some cap space into this season?
I suppose, but we saw them accrue a ton of cap space and do nothing with it last year. And so I don't think this fan base would accept a second straight year of just squirreling away cap space and not making the most of it. But it is possible that they go into the season and see what happens and see if there are teams that are underperforming, that are looking to, mix things up and get into the trade market. So as much as it seems on the surface like, hey, they can't go into the season with cap space and not address the center ice position, I suppose they could. They could wait to see sort of, if somebody shakes free just ahead of training camp. We know that 2 years ago it was August when they found Pius Suter at a discounted rate. So it's not really a race. They don't play a game until October the 9th. But it does seem to me that one move was done with an eye to something else here. And yes, Jack Roslovic is obviously the name that's out there. But perhaps they have a plan B that, we just haven't unearthed yet. So we'll have to see where it goes. But if they go into the season, if they were to hold on to that money, Blake, and start the season, I think you have to be honest with yourself that this forward group, as constructed right here, right now, has some decent players, without a doubt. But the questions remain about which Elias Paterson they're getting back. And then if you start to compare to what's around them in the Pacific Division, again, they've got some decent forwards. They're lacking in star power, certainly compared to the top-end teams. I mean, the Oilers, look what Vegas has done, adding Mitch Marner to Jack Eichel. And I don't know that anybody's putting the Canucks in the same conversation with the Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights, but they're in the division. They're going to see them a bunch. And if they have designs on being a playoff team and then making some noise come playoff time, pretty good chance that they're going to run into one of those opponents.
So let's say it is Roslovic, and I can't give you contract details, Jeff, but let's say they just redistribute the money and go out and sign Jack Roslovic, who remains unsigned on the free agent market. How would that strike you?
I think if it's a shorter contract, a year or two, I'm fine with it. He's not a perfect player by any means, but he has played the position. He's a right shot center. This is a guy that they have been linked to in the past in his time in Columbus. I think they tried to pry him out of the Blue Jackets system. So obviously they like the player, and now it's a question of, at what cost? And I think now that we've passed the middle of July, it's hard to imagine that Jack Roslovic could command a massive term contract. So has he fallen between the cracks completely? It sort of seems that way, or at least it's moving in that direction. But no, I mean, I think, we've talked about flooding the position and just trying to find guys that can play at the National Hockey League level. I would feel better about the Vancouver Canucks at center ice with a Jack Roslovic in their stable than trying to move forward and start the season with, fill-ins from below. And again, as much fun as the Abbotsford run was, that Abbotsford run was built on the back of a goaltender that's not here anymore and a bunch of guys that are NHL tweeners. And I just think because they had success in Abbotsford, that doesn't mean that you plug them in at the NHL level and they're going to do what they did for 2 months at the American Hockey League level, but now in the NHL. Like, there are still questions about Linus Karlsson and Arshdeep Bains and Max Sasson and ultimately what they can contribute. I'm not saying that there isn't a spot for them or that they shouldn't be given every opportunity to prove themselves, but if they were high scorers in the AHL, that doesn't necessarily translate to them stepping into, top line roles with the Vancouver Canucks, where Jack Roslovic is a National Hockey Leaguer without a doubt, and has been for a while now. So, again, I wouldn't want to commit long term, and I don't think they would be looking to do that either at this stage. If you could get them on a year or a 2-year contract, even at reasonable money, and it has to be because they don't have that much cap space. I think I'd be all in on Jack Roslovic, adding Jack Roslovic to this mix.
Arturs Silovs also traded while you were gone.
Can I just ask just one more on Joshua? Jeff, you mentioned the penalty killing element and how that has sort of been an underrated or at least an understated part of this. Pius Suter, their most used penalty killer, gone. Dakota Joshua, gone. So you're looking at Teddy Bluger, Kefir Sherwood, Drew O'Connor. Those are the only three guys who played more than a minute on the shorthanded side of things per game last year. And then I guess Elias Paterson, right? Because someone's got to take faceoffs with Atu Ratu getting worked on in. Where do you think they are penalty killing wise?
Yeah, they brought Connor Garland along, and that was an area that he added some to his game, so I would assume that he is in their plans. But you're right. When you look at just in terms of actual ice time while shorthanded last year, Pius Suter led all Canucks forwards. Dakota Joshua was up there. Danton Heinen, people forget, but he was one of their penalty killers for a while before he got moved out. JT Miller did some, but his penalty killing was under a microscope, and it was sort of being scaled back as well. But yes, Drew O'Connor for sure. And then, it becomes, I think, a bit of an audition on the fly here. But don't forget that this was a penalty kill that obviously sunk the Canucks for a couple of seasons. They built it into a strength of the hockey club, and now there's been all this turnover up front. So they still got key elements on the back end. They like to think that they've got goaltenders that'll provide them saves while shorthanded. But yeah, I'm going to be I think that's one of the sort of areas come training camp, and maybe we won't know even at training camp. Maybe it'll be till the preseason to get a sense of what direction they're going, who they might be thinking as an outside-the-box candidate, somebody that can work their way in. And when I go back to Abbotsford, guys like Archie Baines and Max Sasson did a fair bit of penalty killing down there, and so maybe that gives them a little bit of a leg up in terms of an area they can contribute if they're able to make the big league roster.
Yeah, Josh was their third most used penalty killer 2 seasons ago before his disjointed year last year.
The trade of Silovs just completes the summer that we saw coming when they extended Demko, but it allows us to look back now and think about the other paths that they could have chosen that would have given them a lot more cap space, but would have been a lot more flimsy in terms of the guarantees that they would provide themselves in goal. It was just the most likely of scenarios when you looked at it, because they want to be competitive this year, and this is the best way to be competitive in terms of the quality in goal.
Yeah, that move didn't surprise me. Maybe the timing did. Again, I thought NHL GMs were all hitting the golf course and going fishing. I thought this one might happen a little closer to training camp, the way Vasily Podkolzin did last summer. But not, look, I'm glad for Arturs Silovs. I hope that he gets a legitimate shot in Pittsburgh. They've got a fairly busy stable of goaltenders. A bunch of them are unproven. So if he can establish himself, and look, the Penguins understand the situation as well about waiver requirements and all those types of things. They didn't enter into that blindly. And for the Vancouver Canucks, they get a 4th-round pick and we call him a B prospect, former first-rounder that hasn't touched NHL ice yet. So I posted on social that it was an underwhelming return, and people jumped all over that. And look, I understand. That's the going market for unproven National Hockey League goaltenders this summer. That's just the way it is. The goaltending market is a strange one. I guess I had hoped that maybe the MVP of the American Hockey League playoffs was going to add a little bit of a surplus to whatever they could get in the way of a return, and maybe that was getting a warm body as well as the draft pick. Whatever the case, I think the Canucks, and Patrick Allvin said as much in his statement, they were looking for Arturs Silovs' best interests here as well, to give him an opportunity to be a National Hockey League goaltender, because it wasn't going to happen out of training camp unless there are further injuries to one of the two guys ahead of him on the depth chart. So what a run. It was a ton of fun. The Artie party, not just in the AHL, but for him to do what he did, get thrust into the playoffs a spring ago, and then, of course, the World Championship. So many good stories with Arturs Silovs. We'll see if he can deliver now for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But for the Vancouver Canucks, they've hitched their wagon to both Thatcher Demko and Kevin Lankinen. And again, as Adam Foote comes in as not just a first-year NHL head coach, but a head coach who really doesn't have a ton of experience, I can understand why he would want the luxury of 2 proven guys. And really, you can't go wrong on a lot of given nights. I think the Canucks will feel that they've got an edge in goal, and they look like a team that's going to have success sort of from the net out. And so I understand all of it. But in the moment, when I saw the return, because I know at the draft, people were saying, maybe Arturs Silovs can get them a late 1st rounder or a 2nd rounder coming off the AHL playoffs. But again, that's the market speaks. The market dictates the price, and so he got what he got. I saw some people last week saying, really? Like, Arturs Silovs for a fourth? Dakota Joshua for a fourth? Like, couldn't you package them up and do better than 2 fourth-round draft picks? And I've got some time for that discussion at the very least, but ultimately these moves have been made, and the Vancouver Canucks, I think they lead the league in fourth-round draft picks, although they're spread over, 2028 now? Is that what they got in return for Dakota Joshua?
Doesn't even sound like a real year, does it? That's not happening. 2028. What is this? No, it's a really weird department, the goaltender trades. I warned people about this before the trade happened. Like, be careful in thinking that Arturs Silovs is going to get net you pay dirt here. But ultimately, it's the price that they have to pay to get out from underneath the contract and move on to this next generation of Demko and Lankinen.
And I think we also saw in both cases, guys, that particularly with Dakota Joshua, that with the escalating salary cap, no retention on the Canucks' part. And same with the Edmonton Oilers. They didn't have to retain on Evander Kane, where in years gone by, obviously, if you wanted to move off the final 3 years of a contract of $3 million plus, you probably were going to have to make that a more attractive package. So this way the Canucks were able just to flat out dump the contract of Dakota Joshua. He's now a Toronto Maple Leaf. And again, we'll see where all of this goes for the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, I mean, they take on Kane full freight, move Joshua full. I mean, there's part of me that really dislikes the fact they had to move money out after making the Kane move, after not getting the center, after bringing back Besser. Like, it just, I don't know, Jeff, we had this discussion last year. Does it seem like no plan again, or do you give them credit for being agile and responsive, responding to the market? They lost years, though, Matt. Even if they don't have the center iceman.
It's Kane's done after this year.
Right.
Dakota's not, so... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and look, I saw a lot of people saying, hey, this management group again, when they recognize that a contract a little too hefty, that they're able to move on. Yeah, but they are the same guys that signed Dakota Joshua to that contract a year ago. And, Joshua was negotiating off an 18-goal season in 63 games. So good on him. I'm never going to begrudge a player for getting a contract at the National Hockey League level. But this group a year ago thought that he was worthy of a 4-year deal. And I know that there were stories then that they were a little bit uncomfortable getting to the fourth year of that deal and the amount. But again, I think they recognized that there was some potential there. The thing with Dakota Joshua is he's 29 years of age. He's got one NHL season over 30 points. So as good as he was in that one season, is that going to stand out as an outlier season for him? There have been some conditioning issues. Remember, Rick Tocchet made him a healthy scratch early in that season where they went into San Jose and they won 10-1, and Joshua wasn't part of that. And some of that, I think, had to do with the way that he came to camp and got his season started then. And then last year, obviously, separate category entirely, and nobody's going to hold that against him. But yeah, I mean, it comes back to this idea that what exactly is Dakota Joshua? Had we seen the best of him already, or is there more to give with this player? But that, I said it earlier, I do wonder about some nights and opponents pushing the Canucks around a little bit, and Dakota Joshua certainly set himself apart just by virtue of the size that he brought. I know the Canucks, Drew O'Connor's got some size, but Drew O'Connor's not a terribly aggressive player. That doesn't seem to be who he is. And so, are some other guys going to have to step out of their comfort zone? Perhaps. The last thing you want, teams taking liberties, and we saw that last year at times. Was there enough of a deterrence with Quinn Hughes when teams were taking runs at the captain? So, again, this is not a finished product. It remains a work in progress, but I am curious to see, and that's why I think it does place a premium on Evander Kane delivering on the final year of his contract.
Yeah, we talked about it in the opening block. If Dakota Joshua has the season he had 2 years ago, prorated over 82, that's 23 goals, 42 points, and you're delighted to pay $3.25 for that. If he has the season he had last year, it's 10 goals, 20 points, and you're probably happy.
And I'm glad you brought up his age, because they have two more candidates in this sort of age group that are going to be UFAs in Teddy Bluger and Kefir Sherwood. We already heard Bluger rumors a little bit, so I don't think there's a risk of them extending Teddy Bluger per se, but I have heard Kefir Sherwood extension talks, just from the fans and mulled around by reporters, and I don't care if he goes off to on another 20-goal pace here, Jeff. Like, Kefir Sherwood is going to want a significant raise on $1.5 million, and the Vancouver Canucks should not be the team that gives that to him, as he's now past the age of 30.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. You sign a guy and he does everything that you ask of him. Of course, he's going to want to raise, but you're right. In this world, you have to be careful of bottom six forwards. I'll be really curious if he can come anywhere close to the 19 goals that he scored. I mean, he was terrific for the Vancouver Canucks in terms of consistency and just bringing that edge and grit and, developed into a bit of a penalty killer when we talked about guys on the PK as well. So, has he earned a raise? Yeah. But again, not knowing what the dollars are, you have to be mindful, certainly of that. But, I just wonder if it all came together for Kefir Sherwood last year. Can he come anywhere close to sort of being the player? I was amazed last year that dishing out that many hits didn't take its toll on him. Like, I thought as much as he's exacting a measure of punishment on players, I mean, it takes something out of you as well to throw that many hits. But I think he missed 4 games. He was remarkably durable that way. But I think it probably showed him last year what's capable, that this is a guy that I think had been pigeonholed earlier in his career as, okay, yeah, he was a scorer at the American Hockey League level, but if he's going to be, in the NHL, he's going to have to grind. And then last year, he sort of broke the mold himself. And so really interesting to see what he can do. And I know that right around July 1st, there were some talks about, hey, maybe they extend him as well. That seems to have died a little bit. And I do wonder if the Canucks are, they weren't seemingly in that mindset of taking a wait-and-see approach on Thatcher Demko or Connor Garland or anybody else. There was a rush to get those deals done, but it doesn't feel like it's the same when it comes to Kefir Sherwood.
You mentioned the 2 goaltenders they're going forward with and how Adam Foote has to feel comfort in that as a first-time NHL coach. Patrick Alvin was talking last week, Jeff, that they're feeling comfort in that tandem because 13 sets of back-to-backs, 13 sets of 3 games in 4 nights, 3 sets of 4 games in 6 nights, this condensed schedule that's coming out. I know you like to pour through it. Mm-hmm. When you've had several days here, J-Pat, what stands out to you about the schedule?
Yeah, even on holiday, I set aside a little bit of time to really dig into the schedule. I wrote a piece at Canucks Army as well, if people want to go take a look there. But there were a couple of things right off the hop. Getting the Calgary Flames on opening night, it's a repeat of last year, but interesting that the Flames play the night before in Edmonton, so it's not opening night for the Calgary Flames, and in a season where every point matters, and Canucks and the Flames could very well be duking it out again as they were last year, they probably avoid Dustin Wolf on opening night, right? Like, he probably gets the Oilers on the very first game of the season for the Calgary Flames, and so maybe that's a little bit of a break there. You'd like to think that the Canucks will be up and ready for their home opener. We all remember last year, one of the most entertaining games of the season, as it turned out on opening night with the 6-5 Calgary comeback. But just the start of the season, they're at home to Calgary. They go to Edmonton. They come back for a Thanksgiving Monday afternoon game, a 4:30 start at Rogers Arena on Thanksgiving Monday against the St. Louis Blues. Then they head out on their first real road trip of the season. And I don't know if you guys have looked how it starts, but in Dallas and in Chicago back-to-back. Like, on a map, Dallas way down there, Chicago, like that's
same time
easy.
Zone at least. But
it is in the same time zone, but it's 2.5-hour flight there. And then the third leg of that trip, so they start with back-to-backs, and the third leg is one of those early morning Pacific time starts in Washington. So it's really 3 games in 3.5 days as they bounce around. I'll be curious to see. We know that starts of the season haven't necessarily been the Canucks' friend. When I think back to Bruce Boudreau and the 7 straight losses out of the gate and how that took on a life of its own. But really, when I looked at the schedule, I mean, even in a condensed year with the Olympics, I guess the 2 lengthy homestands surprised me a little bit, just because there's a stretch there from late January through March, and the Olympics are included in there, but 19 of 24 games on home ice. Like, that just feels like it to me. We know they struggled at home last year. they have to find a way to grind out results and keep their head more than above water, because the way the season ends, and I know a lot's been made of this as well, but I just think anybody objectively looking at the schedule, what do they finish with? 14 games against teams in the conference. I think final 11 games are against teams in the Pacific Division. And on top of that, 8 of those final 11 are out on the road. When you play 19 to 24 at home, at some point you're going to have to make it up and get it out on the road and pack the suitcases. 8 of their final 11 are on the road. So if they are right there, if they're hanging into a playoff spot, they're going to have to find a way to get the job done over the final 3 weeks of the season, where most of those games are against divisional foes and out on the road. And that will not be easy, but hey, everybody starts at the start, everybody ends at the end, and then it's just, everybody's got quirks within their schedule, and it's sort of a story of, where are those pockets that jump out at you. That final 11-game stretch with 8 of 11 on the road, that was one that absolutely hopped off the page when I
feel,
8 of 11, 6 of 9, 4 of the last 5.
I feel like the risk is that the Canucks are just going to move their road record to the home and the home record to the road. Like, the Canucks were very good on the road. There's nothing wrong with 21-14-6. That's what.
No, remember Kevin Lankin? Remember Kevin Lankin won his first 10 road games last year? Like, that's probably going to be difficult to repeat. So you're right. They got off to a nice start. They found ways to grind out a bunch of victories. Took overtime and a few of them, but whatever the case, they were wins. But yeah, there's certainly room for improvement on the home record, but you do wonder if it comes at the expense of sort of how decent they were, particularly early in the schedule.
Basically the same road record as the division champ Vegas Golden Knights.
Yep. And Jeff, I hope you're up for all those matinees at Rogers Arena this year as well.
Well, and how about a Thanksgiving Friday in the States in San Jose? Not a holiday in Canada, but they're playing a 1 o'clock start on that Thanksgiving Friday, which is a little like, why would you stick a Canadian team in there and ask their fan base to carve out time to view when you've got all the American opponents that could easily slide in? And whatever.
Jeff, the answer is turnabout is fair play. They got St. Louis here on Canadian Thanksgiving in a matinee, although I suppose it is 6:30 in St. Louis when that game faces off. Anyways, plenty to discuss, unpack, and of course we await the other shoe to drop on the Joshua trade. J-Pat, welcome home. Thanks for this. Catch up soon.
All right, guys. Thanks.